y'all doing today? I hope that you are having a good summer because it is progressing along and it's going to be done before we know it. I'm kind of sad about that, but that's okay. I'm going to take some solace in my books. So I'm here for the July wrap-up. I read a total of, I believe, 9 books for July. I started with The Teacher by Frida McFadden. You know, she is a BookTube favorite. The Teacher was a wild, thrillery ride. You know, it's about this delusional husband, this shoe-obsessed wife, and a student that needs some counseling. There's some student, you know, teacher grooming thing in there. You know, it's a wild ride. Check out my dedicated video. It also includes my vacation to Virginia Beach in there. Good time, good times. I also read An American Marriage. This was a pretty good book as well. You know, you have an innocent man sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit and, you know, trying to hold the marriage together. Good book. Check out my dedicated video as well. I think you will not be disappointed in that book. Now, another book that I read is this one. Now, I participated in the F-athon by Chronicles of Noria, okay? So I read this book for that. I only really got to one book in that readathon, but you know what? Your girl is in there, right? So this is a book that she recommended. Pretty thick book. This is for, I think it's like anti-billionaire or something like that. Editing Courtney here. Billionaires, power and imbalance. But the future is this intricate story set in the future where you have like a bunch of sci-fi included in here, but it's told from multiple like spaces in time about how the tech industry is basically gathering our information, manipulating it to influence us, and then of course selling it back to us for huge profits. So in this book, you're going to throw in like some greedy billionaires who are helping to destroy the world, but then want to use all their high-powered tech to kind of just cut and run pretty much when they realize there's no hope for the world, and you know, leave everybody in its dust for all their consequences, right? But then you have like this other group that thinks maybe we can save the world and, you know, beat these billionaires at their own game. And then it also throws in this, you know, social media influencer, survivalist, journalist that's kind of caught in the middle of all this, trying to figure it out. Pretty interesting concept. But I will say that I was kind of somewhat bored at times with all the tech talk. I mean, I think there was a lot of really good explanations for it. I mean, if you pay attention enough to it, which, you know, I didn't. But, you know, it was okay, you know. But there was also like this spin on religion in it. Overall, I'm glad I stuck it out, even though I don't think this book is definitely for me. I do think that it is probably a good blueprint for, you know, some realistic, horrible things that may happen to the planet if we don't make some changes. And some of them are already happening. Like, you know, you have police corruption, some climate change, like mass violence, you know, things like that. But I do like in this book how it said that change needs to happen quickly, kind of like ripping off a band-aid. Otherwise, you're going to have all these rich, powerful people trying to manipulate and change things back to, you know, the way that suits them best. But great commentary on how, you know, the world's basically going in the crapper and there's people with resources, but it's not profitable enough for them to utilize those resources to do good. And, you know, I'm pretty sure we see that quite often today. But overall, surprisingly, I think enjoyable read for me with like a lot of twists and turns towards the end that I didn't see coming. You know, I'm glad I stuck it out, but definitely was not something I probably would have picked up if it was not for this readathon. And the next book that I read was a book called The Fury. Now, this was a psychological thriller about a bunch of people that are obsessed with this like ex-movie star, right? And then she invites them all to her little private island, and then she winds up dead and they start, you know, pointing fingers at each other. But, you know, not everything is exactly as it seems. And I quote, "We are all unreliable narrators in our own story. So I thought that was pretty cool. But it had a very unique presentation, kind of like someone discussing a movie script with us, with lots of foreshadowing and twists and all these reveals that, you know, kept you guessing throughout the book. So I did like that. I will say that I did not connect with any of the characters. I think that they all need some form of therapy, but there was a lot of really sad parts dealing with, you know, traumatic childhoods that make, you know, for, of course, insecure adulthoods that almost broke my heart and can relate, unfortunately. But it was a good story, and I was able to predict the ending though, so you know how that goes. And I also participated in Christmas in July, right? So the Christmas in July is hosted by the Beach Bum Bookworm, okay? Really fun booktuber, okay? I'm gonna list her in Chronicles of Noria below. But Christmas in July, of course, is to read Christmas books in July. So, you know, I read one, you know, because that's just what I read. So I read a book called Snowfall. Now, I did not realize at the time that it was book 5 in a series, but I still did enjoy it, okay? It was part of this series called the Prophecy series. And it was a very short Christmas story. Basically, you have this parallel universe to Earth where Earth is in peril, and you have this chosen one named Tabitha who is supposed to save everyone, but she also is there to instill hope in them by teaching them about Christmas. It was really cute. It was heartfelt, and you know, the whole manipulation of the earth elements by the people was really cool. It's kind of like a fantasy. It reminded me a bit of the 5th season, but definitely shorter and more varied, but it does sound kind of like an epic series. And another book I read is The Wings Upon Her Back. This was one of those books I just randomly picked up at the library, and you know what, it was okay. So this is a standalone, you know I love a standalone, and this is a standalone debut novel. It's a fantasy and sci-fi about, you know, a city where the gods have provided all of this technology beyond, like, you know, the wildest dreams for the people, right? But now the gods somehow have, you know, abandoned the people. Now, of the 5 gods, you have the mecha god, right? Now, this is the god of like security and protection. Now, this god kind of rouses every now and then. So the people worship this particular god, and it's illegal to worship any of the others, and punishment is very harsh and severe, right? So you have this one warrior, our main character. She shows mercy to someone that she finds that is worshiping this other god, but when that is found out, she is cast out of here, right? In a very harsh way, okay? But then you have these rebels that, you know, want to worship who they please. They find her and then they try to turn her to their side because, you know, she has all this insider information. So then she has to decide where her loyalties lie. But that is definitely easier said than done when, you know, she has believed in this one god and this theory, you know, and prophecy and all this other stuff all her entire life. Now, this book was extremely emotional, okay? I felt like it was like a psychological fiction going on here, right? So you have these 2 POVs. You have a younger and an older version of the same character, and they're basically coming to terms with what they chose to believe and the part they chose to solidify that with. So the reasoning for that, I think that the pacing of the book dragged out a bit. I was basically almost like at 100 pages before my curiosity really got piqued and had some sort of connection with the character. I was really rooting for the 2 different characters for 2 different reasons to make the right decision for who that character was at that particular time in life. And it was very heartbreaking to watch and see what they went through, because definitely was not easy. I felt like they just lost so much, and I kept trying to figure out, you know, how do you have the will to continue when you've having to give up so much? I think that the world building in here was really cool, very imaginative and awesome, with lots of tech. You had a lot of flying people. That was pretty cool. And they also had a lot of characters that you love to hate in this book. A little bit of everything. It was kind of reminiscent to me of the Divergent series, where you have these characters that chose the factions, and then the factions fight against each other. But overall, I did enjoy the stories. The whole thing about the gods I felt was kind of fishy from the start, so I was kind of on cue somewhat with that, but I did feel that some things weren't adequately explained for my liking, and that some things were definitely left open-ended and I needed some more information. So while I was satisfied and this is a complete story, I did leave, with questions that I wouldn't have mind, being answered. But it didn't affect the outcome of the story. And the next book I read, okay, so I took a turn and decided to do a dark romance. So I read Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton, who wrote the book Haunting Adeline, which I've heard so much good things about, okay? So I picked up Does It Hurt, and it is told from two perspectives. You have Sawyer, who's like this con artist with a past she's trying to escape, and she goes around stealing, men's identities. And then you have Enzo, who is a marine biologist, with some abandonment issues from his mom, right? So they get stranded on this island, and then they stumble upon this mystery, and it's a romance, so of course they get it on. Now, I did not think that this book was as dark as I expected it to be. It does have, a sexy scene with a head in the ocean. Very original, I will say that. It had a lot of spice. It just wasn't like dark enough for what I wanted it to be. But there is definitely a lot of spice and some out of nowhere kind of very inconvenient spice where I was like, what are y'all doing? But it was a good time. I did think that Sawyer, that's the lady, I thought that she was immature. I do think that Sawyer, that's the main character, female, she is immature, but I do think she's entertaining. I mean, she gets a tattoo from someone at a bus stop that she just met, so I thought that would definitely be a fun time. And then you have Enzo, that's the guy. I think he has some misplaced anger, that's for sure, and has a choking fetish, which, I wasn't mad at that part, I will say. But if you're going to check out this book, look at the trigger warnings up front. I know there's like sexual assault, there's abandonment issues, kidnapping and torture, and probably some other stuff that I'm forgetting. So just check that out ahead of time. But overall, I did enjoy the story and it was a good time. So another book that I partook in this month is this one, Heavenbreaker. Now, it took me a while to get through this book. This is a fantasy sci-fi book. I think of this as like Divergent meets Avatar meets Hunger Games meets Camelot. A lot of those different elements you will see kind of put into this book. It has a unique world in which, the humans fought with some sort of enemy. That's what it's called, right? So now humans live kind of scattered across the universe in these different space stations. These space stations are segregated according to like the noble class, the low class, and the middle class. And as always, the higher class, that's a noble class, oppresses the lower class and uses and abuses them, right? Now, the noble classes are obsessed with their bloodlines being pure. So you have this noble guy that basically did the dude with this lower class woman and created this girl named Sinali, right? Sinali's 20. So she is very upset that her father has basically offed her mother so that this diluted blood won't be found out, right? So she kills her dad, but she is not happy with just that. She wants to destroy his bloodline. So she basically enters this competition so that she can discredit his name, and they have like this thing. It's almost like a jousting competition and like these huge robots or whatnot. Anyway, it's an interesting premise. It's has a lot of different elements going on. Like I said, it's sci-fi. There's this romance plot that kind of comes out, very slow burn, but this romance plot with this other character, I'm not feeling it. I feel like it's just coming out of nowhere and it's being forced. I felt like I wanted to know a little bit more about the enemy You got to know some of the characters, which I really like. What I didn't like though is that you have all of these like opponents, right? These other side characters. There's 3 main characters for the most part, but you have these side characters that kind of come out used as plot devices and then you never hear from them again. So I really did not like that. But I did like the fast-pacedness of the book, and I like the world building in here because instead of having a bunch of info dump at times, it kind of gradually builds this world as the plot goes on. So I really like that idea of how to build a world and also have action at the same time. But there's a lot of twists and shockers and sabotage and manipulation. There's some violence. I did think that while these little battle competitions was going on, I had a hard time kind of visualizing some of the concepts when they're in these little robot things. Just some of the stuff just I couldn't figure out exactly what it was. But good concept. I think that it definitely has some promise. But my big thing about this book is that it leaves in a cliffhanger and it does not stay that up front. Now, the last story that I read is a short story, and this is by fellow booktuber Coda. I'm gonna link them below. You know, everybody's best friend, right? And this is a short story. I think it's like 19 pages. You can get it off of Amazon. It was free. I like that. But it's basically about a guy that has some sort of shadow ghost at his house, and he invites his brother over and something dangerous happens. So it was a really fun time and I enjoyed it a lot. Good writing, okay? It was a horror book, by the way. And that is, I believe, all the stuff that I read. Now, I did do, you know, I love a good diamond painting. I did do this, there we go, this diamond painting here. Good time. You got the beach there and you got the chair there. So that's for summer. Very pretty. I like that. And I did this little sun catcher doll. Very pretty, right? I'm gonna put this on the window. Okay, let me get out of here. Like, subscribe, comment. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye.